Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 17 of our reading of A Natural History of Dragons, a memoir by Lady Trent, a book by Marie Brennan. And as always, we're going to go over the copyright information. You find it in the book. Well, you have it on the screen right here. A Natural History of Dragons is copyright 2013 by Bryn Noonschwander. All rights reserved. Interior illustrations by Todd Lockwood. Maps by Rhys Davies, and designed by Greg Collins. So, in the last book, the last part, Lady Trent, otherwise known as Isabella Camhurst, discovered some secrets about dragon wings, which was really fascinating. They decided to try and find the Boyer, who is this high-ranking official, to see if they could find Gretelkin, because Gretelkin meant for them to be there, but he seems to have vanished. And while Lady Trent was in the sauna, apparently something was outside there making noise or something. And she's not sure exactly what that was all about. And there's no evidence that there was anything out there to begin with. So we're going to find out what exactly went on. And we're going to start with the previous paragraph. I slept badly that night. When I woke, though, I thought it only the usual pause between first sleep and second sleep, and lay for a moment considering what I wanted to do with myself during that wakeful time. Then I heard a sound outside. I knew that what had woken me. It wasn't the same sound as before, that moaning, rattling snarl. No, it was a more familiar sound, and more frightening for it, in a way. The flapping of enormous leathery wings. If the rockworms were attacking humans, might they go so far as to attack the village? I rammed the point of my elbow under Jacob's ribs, unceremoniously rousing him. What? He mumbled, coming bolt upright in bed. Shh, I hissed, as if I hadn't provoked his too loud response. Listen, Isabella, what? He fell silent as the flapping sound came again. The childish instinct in me wanted to curl up under the covers, as if those were proof against all monsters in the night. The part of me that remembered being naked in the sauna sent me on a hunt for shoes. If I had to do anything, I'd prefer not to be barefoot when I did it. In a quiet, tense voice, I relayed my thoughts to Jacob. The rifles are downstairs, he said, his tone matching mine. Do you think we should go outside and shoot at it? I whispered. The bedroom windows were shuttered for the night, but a small louver over them admitted fresh air and just enough light to make out the indecision in Jacob's face. His thoughts, I guessed, were much like mine. Would that drive the beast off or simply enrage it? Wake, Mr. Wilker, he said at last. I'll load the guns. This I did with alacrity. Mr. Wilker, it turned out, was not an easy man to rouse, and I did not quite dare elbow him as if he were my husband. I don't think he was quite fully conscious when he stumbled downstairs to join Jacob, and in retrospect, it might have been better to trust that 10-year-old boy with the rifle. I pushed it into his hands, remembering the wolf drake incident. I wasn't entirely certain I should have one either. No one had taught me to shoot in the intervening years, but I could at least aim the barrel skyward and make noise to frighten the creature off. So out I went with the men, gun in hand. Fog had settled into the village Fog had settled into the valley that cradled Drustanev, and its touch made my skin crawl. Of course, it could not be a clear night. I was doomed never to see this threat properly. There was an unpleasant stink in the air, too, that made me wrinkle my nose. Then I glimpsed movement through the fog. There! I blessed the chance that made me point with my finger instead of the rifle. Jacob and Mr. Wilker both brought their guns swinging around, but they were seasoned enough men not to pull the trigger immediately, and so we avoided shooting Reliscue, one of our porters, from the hunt. He too carried a rifle. You heard it? He whispered, hurrying to our side. Many people had, it seemed. There were others outside that night, most of them armed, but as with my fright in the sauna, the sound had stopped. Whatever had brought the dragon to Drustanev, it seems to have gotten bored and flown away. At least I thought it was a dragon, until we heard a cry from behind our house. Everyone rushed in that direction. The cry was human, though, and one of shock and fear rather than pain. We arrived on the slope behind the house to find Astamir pressed against the wall, eyes wide in horror, and the rifle dropped to the ground. Some 10 paces away, the grass was blackened and scorched, as if with fire. In 4 places I saw as I forced myself closer, and the unpleasant smell was strongest here. Jacob came with me, then went ahead and knelt alongside one of the marks. After a moment's study, he lifted his head and looked at me in confused alarm. It looks like a footprint. My hands wrapped tightly around the rifle. The print, if so it was, stretched nearly 2 feet from front to back, and there were 4 of them, the size of beasts that implied. Mr. Wilker had joined Jacob. It's almost like a dragon's print, but not quite, and it seemed to be burnt into the soil, not pressed. He spoke quietly, but not quietly enough. Murmurs sprang up among the villagers, and then Astamir shattered the tension by wailing, Zangrit Mat. A swift glance showed me the words meant nothing to either skrilling gentleman. The Vestrani, however, were murmuring prayers and gripping their rifles as if no longer sure they would do any good. I knew they would not like me asking, but I had no choice. What or who is Zangrit Mat? Everyone immediately spread their fingers against evil. No one answered. Astamir flung himself forward, though, and seized the nightshirt of a man towards the back of the group who I recognized as the village priest. I'm sorry, Astamir babbled, falling to his knees. I should never have taken them. I thought it was just a story, something to keep the children from being hurt in the ruins. I've been there before. Nothing has ever happened. The ruins. I remembered the crowd that had greeted us on our return to Drustanev. The graggers and prayers, evil spirits or some such. At the time, I had dismissed it as local superstition. But now, Astamir suddenly wheeled on his knees to point at me. Her. She must have done something. She wandered off. I don't know where she went. She must have roused him. The accusation did not banish my fear, but it gave me something else to feel as well, annoyance. I roused nothing, I said sharply. What is this creature supposed to be? Some kind of dragon? You have enough of those about. No need to go inviting demonic ones. Though no rockworm had ever left its prints burned into the ground that I knew of. Their extraordinary breath was ice, not fire, and even an Achaean desert drake did not have feet of flame. He was not, Astamir began, but stopped when the priest gripped his shoulder. We should not speak of it here, now, the priest said, glancing about. Whether he meant at night or near the prince, or when the beast might still be about, I do not know, but everyone spread their fingers again. Tomorrow you will come to the Tabernacle. We may speak there safely, and I will tell you. I stiffened at the thought of entering the idolatrous place. Recall, I was very young. To me, temple worshippers were pagans. I had not yet been to parts of the world where Sagalism of any sort held no sway at all, and the various heathen rites I underwent later would have given my 19-year-old self in my 19-year-old self indignant vapors. Oh my. Okay. But my desire for knowledge was stronger than my religious sensibilities, which after all were more a matter of unthinking habit than real conviction. I nodded. Very well, but I sincerely hope that what you have to say is not a waste of time. Chapter 15. The Tale of Zengrit Mott, an offering to help an offer of help to Dagmira, a chilly cure for our supernatural woes. Okay, let me just check here. Okay. I was young and skirling, born and raised in a pragmatic land where many of the most intricate points of religion had long since been discarded as unnecessary complications. Okay. I'm afraid I gave very great offense to the priest of Drusenev by walking in the front door of his tabernacle. Those among my readers who are temple worshippers have likely just dropped this book in horror. Alas, I was, and still am, a natural historian, not an anthropologist or a student of history. And although in these enlightened times we acknowledge men to be a higher order of animal, I concern myself only with the non-human sort. This is my grandiose way of saying I hadn't paid the blindest bit of attention to the local tabernacle, even during the feast of the reception. I had not noticed that only men were in the front, that only men went in the front door, while women used one on the side. The great magister of Skirland, after all, ended segregation by sex nearly 200 years ago, though some magisterial tradition in some other countries maintained the practice in their assembly houses. Jacob, it seemed, no more thought of this issue than I did, for he walked in along with me, and we were 10 feet in before our brains figured out what the low wooden wall at our side was. We stopped at the same instant and exchanged looks of identical dismay, and that, of course, was the moment that the priest chose to enter and spot us. Had I thought I could manage it gracefully in my dress, I might have tried to vault over the wall. It only came to my waist. Images of my skirt catching and sending me over face first stopped me. Would it be better to retreat and come back in by the side door I had now spotted much too late? Paralysis over this question resulted, as it so often does, in me taking a third, entirely unsatisfactory route. I curtsied to Mencken Goen and offered a stammering apology. I did not realize it's quite different in Skirland, you see. He scowled at me. He had been scowling the night before, too. Clearly my status as the bringer of evil spirits did not endear me to him in the slightest, and this error compounded it. I was not surprised to see him in full religious garb once more, though at least we were spared the racket of Graggers. Wordlessly, he pointed at the door behind me. Was I to leave permanently or come back in the proper way? I decided on the latter, mostly because I refused to be shamed into scurrying away. It was, if he wanted me gone, let him say so. But when I came back in through the women's door, Mencken made no comment. He simply gestured for both of us to sit down. on our respective sides. We both chose the frontmost benches and then went through the routine, not unlike the one we had performed upon my return from the ruins. Over both of us, perhaps Jacob was contaminated by virtue of our marriage. I filled the time by studying the interior of the tabernacle. When I was 6, we briefly had a nursery maid with very strong opinions on the goat-killing heathens, her phrase, that followed the temple. To hear her talk, the interior of the building should have been a dank, foul place, liberally decorated with entrails and perhaps a baby's skull rolling forgotten in some corner. It was stuffy, but no more so than any other building in the freezing and near windowless land. The priests had lit candles for this meeting, proper candles, not the tallow dips used by most Vistrani peasants. There was an altar, but its stone surface was ruthlessly clean apart from the scorch marks, and the air smelled of nothing worse than incense. Behind the altar, an oil lamp burned with a steady flame, carried from the sacred fire in the temple itself. It would be used to light the fires for the sacrifices and was never permitted to go out. Menchem finished his prayers. He turned to face us and then stopped, appalled anew at the sight of me with my pocket journal braced against one knee. "You're going to write this down?" he asked, disbelieving. Confused, I glanced down at the journal. Should I not? From across the dividing wall, I heard muffled sound from Jacob that might have been a laugh. It was, after all, a very magisterial response. Ours is a religion of scholarship and intellectual debate, rather different from the sacrifice and purity concerns of the temple. It baffled Menchem, or perhaps he simply did not expect such a response from a woman. I could not say. Either way, I had thrown him off his script, and he chose to ignore me in favor of recovering. If I'd known you were going to the ruins, I would have forbade it. For your own sake. There is evil there. So you said. When we came back, Jacob said. Jacob sent me a quelling look across the wall, and I went on more temperately. Where does this evil come from? Menchem cast a glance over his shoulder towards the altar and the eternal flame, as if looking to them for strength or protection. Then he took a deep breath and began. I will not attempt to reproduce this exact wording here. Between my imperfect Vistrani, the haste of my notes, and his tendency to change my position here, punctuate every sentence with an invocation to the Lord, the result would be unreadable. Instead, I will give you the tale as I understood it. Then, Zengrit Mat is the name the inhabitants of Drusenev gave to the man who supposedly once ruled the kingdom surrounding the ruins. I had seen back in Draconian time. Such kings are invariable, either well beloved by their subjects or complete tyrants. Zangrit Mat, to my surprise, was the former, but it seemed he had one ambition that led him badly astray: the desire to become a dragon. For many years, he prayed to the gods to transform him, but with no success. At last, unhinged by the obsession, he turned the other way and instead made a pact with a demon. But the demon, of course, did not properly fulfill his end of the bargain. Some error in wording on the king's part, or simple or simple maliciousness on the demons led to a terrible result. The king became not a dragon nor a man he had been, but a monstrosity, caught forever halfway between, and not in the manner of those heathen gods either. Mencken was careful not to tell us what here. Mencken was careful to tell us with a draconic head on a more or less human body. He was four-legged like a worm, but with human skin and a half-human face and human hands on the ends of twisted wings. Okay. We do have right here a picture of Zenket Mott. I will keep that on the screen for now. There. And then we will continue. Okay, if it will work. Okay, come on, work. Okay, over here. Okay. Now, driven mad by this transformation, the king became a plague on his own people. He declared himself a god and hoarded all the riches to be had, while his subjects starved. Worse yet, he demanded humans for sacrifice, and the blood ran out of the front door of his shrine like a river. His evil grew and grew until one night he took flight in a storm. The lightning struck him. He fell atop the roof of his own shrine, collapsing it, and that was the end of both king and kingdom. Those who have read David Parnell's Reliquaries of Vestrani Wisdom will recognize this tale. It is told in other parts of the mountains as well, though the details differ. In some versions, the evil dragon is slain by an angel of the Lord, or by a brave hero, or else the pact was for a limited time, and afterwards the demon claimed him. Even the notion of a monstrous king spirit haunting a nearby ruin is not unique, though that epilogue is not as often heard. I knew nothing of such tales that day, taking notes in the Drustanev Tabernacle, and although the struggle to follow Menkem's account gave me some distance from what he said, the dim interior and the memory of those monstrous footprints burned into the ground behind our house made me shiver. Did I believe what the priest was saying? No, of course not. I prided myself on being a rational woman, and the notion that the spirit of a twisted dragon-human hybrid would lurk about for thousands of years after the downfall of his civilization, ignoring all visitors to his ruins, for certainly there had been then some, only to latch onto me for no good reason. Then I remembered the Firestone. Nonsense, my rational mind said again. Once I had recovered from its brief stagger. True, we knew the Draconians had valued the stones. Many had been found in their ruins, which is why so many sites had been ransacked by looters. But the story Mencken told said nothing about treasure. The part of my mind that remembered the noise outside the sauna and the footprints in the grass was not reassured. Then, Lord Hilford, I said, abruptly interrupting the priest. Mencken said gravely, yes. I might have imagined the noise, but the footprints were undeniably real, which meant something was out there, something that might, based on the evidence thus far, have an interest in me. And if that interest had anything to do with our trip to the ruins, then both Astoria and Lord Hilford might be in danger. The young man was here in the village, but the Earl. Jacob stood swiftly. I'll go talk to Wilker. I could tell he was convinced, that he was not convinced. Neither was I, really, but I didn't have to be. I would far rather take the precaution of sending Mr. Wilker after Lord Hilford and feel a fool for it later than not take that precaution and feel an even bigger fool if something did happen. To my husband, as much as the priest, I said, I have a few more questions, if I may. Jacob's hand extended as if to grip my shoulder briefly in comfort, but the wall kept us too far apart, and it might have been a breach of etiquette to reach over anyway. His fingers curled into a fist that jerked once, a curiously masculine gesture that seemed to extort me to strength. Then he went out. The end of my pencil was between my teeth. I realized as I glanced down at my notes. I removed it and said, if this is some kind of evil spirit, a little of my doubt crept into my voice, but I did my best to sound agreeable. What would you recommend? You must be cleansed, the priest said with an air of finality. It should have been done when you came back from the ruins. I said so at the time, but we will do it now. Okay, we are going to have to stop that here. We have been reading from A Natural History of Dragons, a memoir by Lady Trent. And it is a book by Marie Brennan. If you like this content, then make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. Also, if you want to support me anyway, all the information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.